Romance of Sui and Tang Dynasties, Chapter 81.
We are going to travel back to the 8th century, to the absolute peak of the Tang Dynasty.
Right.
Imagine a scene in a lavish palace courtyard. It's a very specific sensory experience. The air is thick with the smell of expensive sandalwood incense, mixed with the sweat of a crowded party and probably a lot of spilled wine.
And you hear a crowd, you hear beautiful palace maids and eunuchs, courtiers, just laughing hysterically. It's a riot of noise.
And in the center of all this chaos, there's a carriage.
A brightly colored, really festive carriage, the kind you might see in a parade.
Right. But inside the carriage, it's not a child, it's not a prince.
No.
Wrapped up in these oversized brocade swaddling clothes, like a newborn baby, is a grown man.
Yep.
And not just any man, a 300-pound, battle-hardened general of the frontier.
A guy who commands armies, who cuts down enemies for a living.
Exactly.
Sounds like a fever dream. Or, I don't know, a sketch from a modern political satire where things have gone completely off the rails.
It really does. And the cherry on top, the Emperor Xuanzong, the ruler of the most powerful dynasty in the world, he walks in. He sees his top general in a diaper being paraded around.
And instead of being horrified,
He starts laughing. He joins the party.
it's an image that just burns into your brain. But what we are looking at today isn't just a funny historical anecdote. This scene is the symptom of a terminal illness.
That is the perfect way to put it. This is based on Chapter 81 of the Romance of Sui and Tang Dynasties. And while the surface is all laughter and silk, we are actually looking at the intersection of absolute power, willful blindness, and the kind of chaotic personal dynamics that can bring an entire empire crashing down.
We're talking about the rot underneath the Golden Age, how a court full of smart people ended up in a situation where washing a general like a baby was considered, normal behavior.
And to understand how we got to that absurdity, we actually have to start way before the party. We have to start with the people who tried to stop it.
We have to talk about the silence.
The silence is the key.
It is. And to hear the silence, we first have to listen to the canaries in the coal mine, the Qin brothers.
Right, Qin Guomo and Qin Gozhen. In the source text, these guys are described as upright officials in the Hanlin Academy. These are the guys who, actually read the memos and checked the spreadsheets.
Is the classic whistleblowers. They look around the court of Emperor Xuanzong and they realize the math just isn't mathing. They identify two massive existential threats to the empire.
Okay, threat number one.
The rewards. They notice that the emperor is handing out titles, gold, and land to his favorites at a rate that is, it's completely unsustainable. Fiscal irresponsibility on a massive scale.
And threat number two.
And Lucian.
The general in the diaper.
The very same. But before the diaper incident, he was known as this wild man of the frontier. He commanded huge military forces on the border. And the Qin brothers looked at the access he was getting to the inner palace and they just said, this is dangerous.
They were specific, right? They didn't just say he's a bad guy.
No. They argued that allowing a border general, someone with his own private army, to wander freely in and out of the emperor's private sanctum. I mean, it violated every security protocol in the book.
It's a breach of national security.
Absolutely. So they write this brave, detailed memorial. They sign their names to it. They send it up the chain of command to Emperor Xuanzong.
And in a healthy organization, the CEO or the emperor reads that and says, wow, thanks for the heads up. Let's look into this.
Right. But in this court, the emperor is annoyed. He doesn't see it as a warning.
He calls it slander.
Exactly. He thinks these guys are just buzzkills who want to ruin his good mood.
And this is the moment where the system breaks. Because when the leader signals that he doesn't want to hear bad news, the sharks start circling.
Enter the villain of our story, Li Linfu.
The treacherous prime minister.
Li Linfu is, honestly, he's a dark genius of organizational psychology. He sees the emperor is irritated by these complaints, and he realizes he can use that to consolidate his own power.
He wants to make sure no one ever complains again.
Precisely. So he calls a meeting with the other officials, and he gives a speech that I think is one of the most chilling things in administrative history. He uses this metaphor of standing horses.
I have the quote here in the notes, and it actually gave me goosebumps. Walk us through this analogy.
So Linfu points to the ritual horses standing outside the palace gates. Now, these are ceremonial horses. They have one job, stand there and look impressive.
Okay.
He tells the officials, do you see those standing horses? As long as they stand there silently without moving, they are fed high-quality third-grade feed. They're washed, they're groomed, they live a life of luxury. But, he says, if one of them makes a sound, if it neighs or steps out of line, it is immediately discarded. It loses everything.
Talk about a carrot and stick approach.
Yeah.
But it's mostly stick.
It is a message that requires zero interpretation. He is telling the entire government, your job is not to govern. Your job is to be scenery. Shut up, eat your high-quality feed, and let me and the emperor do whatever we want.
And the terrifying part is, it worked.
Instantly, the source text says, tongues were tied. The court fell completely silent. And here's the tragedy. The emperor interprets this silence as success.
He thinks he's doing a great job because nobody is complaining.
Exactly. He looks around and thinks, wow, my administration is flawless. Everyone is happy. He starts believing his own hype. The text mentions he looks at his treasury and sees it overflowing. He starts viewing gold and silk as dirt because he has so much of it.
It's that classic dictator trap. You cut out the feedback loop, so you detach from reality.
And because he thinks the world is on autopilot, he decides he doesn't need to work anymore.
Right.
He hands over all administrative power to Li Linfu, the guy who silenced everyone, and she retires to the inner palace to focus entirely on pleasure, music, and his favorite consort, Yang Guifei.
Which creates the perfect vacuum for a manipulator to step in. We need to talk about An Lushan. We know he's a general, but how does a guy like that navigate a court full of sophisticated poetry-quoting elites?
It's performance, a calculated performance directed by Li Linfu.
So he had a coach.
He did. See, Li Linfu knows the emperor is paranoid. He's wary of intellectuals. He's wary of people who seem too smart or ambitious.
So being smart is a liability.
Right. So Li Linfu coaches An Lushan. He basically says, don't try to be smart. Be the dumb, loyal soldier.
The aw shucks, I'm just a simple barbarian act.
Exactly. And Lushan plays the role of the clumsy, uncultured, fiercely loyal barbarian who just loves the emperor so much he can't help himself. He makes himself seem harmless, even lovable.
And the emperor eats it up.
He loves it. He finds An Lushan amusing. It's like having a pet bear. You think it's cute and cuddly, and you forget that it is an apex predator.
And this leads to this bizarre family dynamic. The emperor is so charmed that he orders An Lushan and Yang Guifei and her brother Yang Wuzong to become a family.
It blurs the lines completely. The emperor effectively adopts An Lushan into the inner circle and the wealth.
We have to talk about the money being thrown around here.
Oh, the cosmetics budget.
The cosmetics budget.
So,
The text says that Yang Guifei's sisters, the ladies of Guao, Han, and Qin, were given a monthly allowance of 100,000 coins, just for powder and rouge.
let's put that in perspective. In the Tang Dynasty, a few coins could buy you a meal. 100,000 coins a month. That's generational wealth for a normal family, and they're blowing it on makeup.
And the irony is, the text says the lady of Guao didn't even wear makeup.
She was so naturally beautiful, she refused to wear powder because she didn't want to cover up her skin. She would just lightly touch up her eyebrows before seeing the emperor.
So they are literally burning money.
It highlights the waste.
Yeah.
But it also highlights the corruption. They are throwing money at people who don't even need it, purely as a flex. Meanwhile, remember the standing horses. The officials who actually run the country are terrified to speak up about budget deficits because they don't want to lose their feed.
So we have an emperor who is willfully blind, a prime minister who has silenced the critics, and the general who is pretending to be a harmless idiot while gathering power.
And this brings us back to that fever dream scene in the intro, the washing the baby scandal.
This is the moment where the rot finally breaks through the surface.
It really is. And we have to be clear here. The source text states bluntly that An Lushan and Yang Guifei are having an affair. They are communicating privately.
Right. But the emperor doesn't see it, or, and this is the darker interpretation, he chooses not to see it because confronting it would ruin his fantasy life.
So 3 days after An Lushan's birthday, Yang Guifei decides to perform a traditional ritual. In Chinese culture, when a baby is 3 days old, there is a washing the baby ceremony. It's a celebration of new life.
A touching ceremony for an infant.
Correct. But Yang Guifei decides to do it for An Lushan, a 40-something-year-old, 300-pound general.
I'm trying to imagine the logistics of this.
It's grotesque. She has the palace maids strip him down. They take expensive brocade fabric that probably cost a year's wages, and they wrap him up like a giant baby.
And then they put him in a carriage.
A colorful, festive palanquin. And the palace maids are crowding around, pushing the carriage, laughing, screaming, making a huge racket. It's a farce. It's completely undignified.
And the emperor hears this, right? He's over in the Yutun courtyard, probably trying to read a scroll. and he hears this riot going on.
He asks his attendants, what is all that thunderous noise? And they tell him, oh, it's just Consort Yang playing the Washing the Baby game with An Lushan.
Now pause. In a normal world, you tell a king that his wife is stripping his top general naked and washing him. Heads roll.
That is treason. That is an admission of intimacy. It's a massive slap in the face to the emperor's dignity.
But Wanzong,
He laughs. He thinks it's hilarious. He hops in a small cart and goes over to watch.
I watches his lover play act that his general is her baby.
And he joins in the fun. The text says he was greatly pleased. And not only that, he rewards them. He gives Yang Guifei thousands in gold and silver coins as washing money.
So instead of punishing them for making a mockery of the court, he tips them.
It represents the total collapse of boundaries. The standing horses warned against An Lushan having access to the palace. Now he's literally being bathed and swaddled in the inner courts, and the emperor is applauding. It shows that the emperor has completely lost touch with reality. He is viewing his life as entertainment, not governance.
It's the ultimate distraction. If you're laughing, you aren't thinking.
Exactly. And while all this noise and laughter and gold throwing is happening in the main palace, we have to remember that there is a completely different vibe in another part of the Forbidden City.
This is the cinematic cut. We go from the loud, colorful party to the Shenyang Palace. This is where the former favorite lives.
Guifei, or the plum consort.
Right.
And the contrast is heartbreaking. And it's actually built around fruit.
We have the battle of the fruits. Lychees versus plums.
Right. Guifei loved plums. That was her brand. When she was the favorite, people sent rare plum blossoms from all over the empire just to please her. But now that she's fallen out of favor, no one sends plums. Her courtyard is overgrown. She is forgotten.
Meanwhile, Yang Guifei has a different craving. Lychees.
And this is a logistical nightmare. Lychees grow in the hot, humid south places like Guangdong or Hainan. That is thousands of miles away from the capital in Cheng. And lychees spoil incredibly fast, like in a few days.
So how do they get them there?
The emperor set up a special relay system, fast horses running day and night, passing baskets of fruit from rider to rider like a baton.
There's that famous Dumu poem about this. One ride of red dust, the concubine laughs. No one knows it's lychees coming.
It's such a powerful image. The red dust is the cloud kicked up by the horse galloping at full speed. To the average peasant watching, seeing a horse running that hard usually meant war. It meant urgent military intelligence.
But it wasn't war. It was fruit delivery.
It was Amazon Prime for the emperor's girlfriend, paid for with the blood and sweat of the imperial courier system.
That is infuriating. So Guifei is sitting in her cold palace, probably shivering, and she hears about these lychees. She realizes she has been completely replaced.
She's desperate. She's isolated, so she tries to pull a Hail Mary. She calls for Gao Lishi, the powerful eunuch who manages the palace.
And she asks him the question that no one wants to answer. Does the emperor even remember my name?
And Gao Lishi is stuck. He knows the emperor remembers her, but he also knows that Yang Guifei is the new power center. He's a standing horse, too. He wants to keep his job.
So Guifei tries to bribe him, not with money, but with art.
She pulls a historical reference. She talks about Empress Chen of the Han Dynasty. Empress Chen had lost favor, so she paid a famous poet, Sima Shangru, a huge sum of gold, thousands of pieces, to write a poem so moving, so beautiful that it won the emperor back.
She wants to buy a Come Back to Me poem. She says, I'll pay 1,000 gold pieces if you find me a poet.
But Gao Lishi refuses.
Why?
He could use the money.
Fear. Pure fear. He is terrified of Yang Guifei. He knows that if he helps Guifei and Yang Guifei finds out, he's finished. He lies and says, sorry, there are no good poets around right now. Which is a blatant lie. This is the Tang Dynasty. It's the golden age of poetry.
Yeah.
You can't throw a rock without hitting a genius poet in Chang'an.
Yeah.
Li Bai is probably drinking in a tavern down the street.
Exactly. But Gao Lishi won't take the risk. So Guifei realizes she's truly on her own. She decides to write the poem herself. It's called The Rhapsody of the East Tower, or Lo Dong Fu.
Let's talk about this poem, because this isn't just a sad diary entry, it's a political act.
It is. It's devastatingly honest. She describes her neglect. She writes about how she's too lazy to comb her hair because, well, who is there to see it? She contrasts the warm spring where the emperor and Yang Guifei are partying with her cold, closed courtyard.
And she talks about the oaths, right? We swore by the sea and mountains.
Yes. But then she gets bold. She names the problem. She writes that jealousy stole her love and locked her away. She is directly accusing Yang Guifei of manipulating the emperor.
She sends this poem to the emperor, and for a moment, it works.
For a fleeting moment, the old Wanzong surfaces. He reads it, he sighs, he feels moved, he remembers their old love, and he feels a pang of guilt.
But then, the jealousy walks in.
Yang Guifei finds out about the poem. And she goes nuclear. She doesn't just get mad, she demands Mei Fei be put to death.
For writing a poem.
She frames it as resentment. In the court, complaining about your lot in life can be twisted into disrespecting the emperor.
So here's the final test of the emperor's character. He was moved by the poem. He knows he's wrong.
Well,
Does he stand up for Mei Fei?
no. Well, he refuses to execute her. He draws the line there. He says, she just wrote a poem because she's lonely. We can't kill her for that. But that's all he does. He is too afraid of Yang Guifei's temper to visit Mei Fei or to comfort her. He just goes silent.
He goes silent, just like the officials.
Exactly. Yang Guifei throws a tantrum, treats him coldly, and he just endures it to keep the peace. The most powerful man on earth, who commands armies and millions of subjects, is walking on eggshells around his consort because he can't handle the conflict.
Meanwhile, imagine for a moment that the fate of, well, the most powerful empire on earth is hanging by a single, very fragile thread.
We're talking mid-8th century, right? The absolute peak of the Tang dynasty.
Exactly. The borders are secure, the culture is just flourishing, the capital, Chang, is basically the center of the world. But inside the Daming Palace, the entire political structure is about to crack.
And it doesn't start with a rebellion or a famine or anything you'd expect.
No, it starts with a jealous comment about a purple jade flute, an accusation involving, of all things, mouth moisture, and an emperor just completely losing it and evicting his favorite person.
It honestly sounds like the plot of a melodramatic palace drama, but as we know from the Sui Tangyani, these personal grievances were the tectonic plates shifting right under the surface of the High Tang.
That's right. The seed of destruction was sown in a domestic argument.
A lover's quarrel.
Yeah. So how that quarrel between Emperor Xuanzong and Yang Guifei exposed the terrifying fragility of the whole imperial court. How a lock of hair became a political weapon.
Precisely. You have to look past the romance and see the power dynamics, because when the personal is political, a breakup isn't just a breakup.
It's a constitutional crisis.
It really is.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The emperor is holding a banquet. Yeah, it's a very exclusive inner palace stuff. Just the princes, the inner circle.
And Prince Ning is there. Now, he's an interesting figure. He's the emperor's older brother, the one who arguably could have been emperor himself, but, stepped aside.
That feels like a crucial detail. There's got to be a complex dynamic there already. Respect, maybe some underlying tension.
For sure. And Prince Ning is a master musician. During this banquet, he's playing this purple jade flute. It's described as this exquisite, rare, very personal instrument.
So the party winds down, the princes leave, and the emperor steps out to change his clothes. Yang Guifei, the imperial consort, is still in the room.
And she spots this flute. It's just been left on the couch, and since she's a musician herself, she naturally picks it up.
But she doesn't just look at it.
No, she starts playing it. And you have to remember, Yang Guifei wasn't just a famous beauty, she was a virtuoso. So she's playing a melody, probably enjoying the quality of this incredible instrument.
And then this is it. This is where the trouble starts. Emperor Xuanzong walks back in.
He sees his favorite consort playing his brother's flute.
And instead of, complimenting her music, he throws out this incredibly specific, really biting comment. He asks her why she's playing that flute when she has her own, and then he drops the line about mouth moisture.
It's a moment that just reveals so much about Xuanzong's psychology at this stage. He says, referring to Prince Ning, he just played that. His mouth moisture is still on it. How can you put your mouth on it?
Wow. That's surprisingly visceral, isn't it? He's talking about coups, which is like residue or saliva.
Right. But in that courtly context, sharing a wind instrument is incredibly intimate. It's almost like an indirect kiss. He's not worried about germs.
No, he's implying a breach of propriety. It's possessiveness, pure and simple.
Exactly. He's implying an intimacy between her and his brother that absolutely should not exist. In the rigid hierarchy of the palace, where every single interaction is scripted, her putting her lips where Prince Ning's lips just were is a major transgression in his eyes.
But Yang Guifei, she is not the type to just lower her head and apologize.
Not at all. This is a woman who knows she owns the emperor's heart.
So she puts the flute down, I'm imagining very slowly, and she just snaps back. She says Prince Ning finished playing ages ago, so the so-called moisture is long gone. She doesn't stop there, does she?
No, she launches a counterattack. A fascinating piece of whataboutism, really. She brings up a past incident to call out his hypocrisy.
What'd she say?
She says, there was someone else whose feet were hooked or stepped on, causing a shoe to tear, and you didn't care about that at all. Why are you being so harsh with me over a flute?
I remember reading that part and thinking, that is a deep cut. She's referencing a specific moment where the emperor allowed some other woman, a rival, a maid, we don't know, to get physically flirtatious with her.
Hooking feet under the table, stepping on shoes. It's a direct accusation of, well, at least emotional wandering. She's saying, you let others get away with actual physical contact, but you're shaming me for playing a flute.
It's a direct shot. And it must have touched on his guilt over other consorts, especially the plum consort, Guifei, who was her arch rival.
Boy, it strikes a nerve. The emperor is probably a bit drunk, he's aging, he's insecure, and now he's being dressed down by his consort in front of the staff.
And the text says he becomes Boran Danu.
Suddenly furious. The explosion is instantaneous. He calls her rudely unmannerly. And in an absolute rage, he orders Gao Lishi, the head eunuch, to send her back to the Yang family home immediately.
And he forbids her from ever entering his presence again.
This isn't just go to your room. This is a public eviction. He is stripping her of her status and sending her back to her cousin's house in the city. It's a total humiliation.
And that's where the ripple effect really begins. Yang Guifei leaves the palace in tears, completely stunned.
She says she relied too much on his favor and never expected the sky's might to turn on her like that. But the real drama, I think, is what happens when she gets to the Yang household.
Right, because the Yang family isn't just a family anymore. They are the government. Her cousin, Yang Guizheng, is basically the prime minister. Her sisters are titled ladies.
And their entire power base is built on one single thing, the emperor's love for Guifei. Without that, they're just, well, a bunch of corrupt social climbers.
And the text says panic sets in immediately.
Total despair. They're weeping. They are terrified. They know that if this exile sticks, their enemies will come for them within days. And there is a very, very significant observer in the house during all this chaos.
And Lushan himself.
And Lushan himself.
We have to pause on this. Having An Lushan there just feels so cinematic. This is the general who will eventually lead the rebellion that breaks the Tang. But at this moment, he's just a loyal subject. And he's also her adopted son, isn't he?
That's the bizarre reality of the Tang court. This grown man, this rough-edged general from the frontier, had formally asked to be adopted by the consort to, curry favor.
So he's there visiting his mother and her family, and he's just watching the entire system collapse in real time.
He is, and he wants to intervene because his status is tied to her too. But he's cunning. He realizes the emperor is volatile. If he steps in now, he might be accused of conspiring with them, so he stays silent.
He just watches.
He sends spies to watch the palace, but he lets the Yang family sweat it out.
The source makes such a profound observation here. It notes that when one woman offends the will, a group of small men lose their power.
It just highlights how the whole administration was a house of cards, resting on a romance.
Meanwhile, back in the palace, the sky is not looking so mighty.
You'd think after kicking her out, Xuanzang would enjoy the peace and quiet.
But it's the exact opposite. The silence is deafening. As soon as her carriage leaves, all that anger just evaporates and is replaced by this crushing loneliness.
The palace just feels empty to him, and so he tries to fill that void immediately. In a moment of sheer desperation, he tries to summon Guifei, the plum consort.
The ex-girlfriend. The one Yang Guifei displaced. It's a classic rebound move.
A total rebound move, but she doesn't come.
Why not?
Her reason is so telling. She claims she's sick, but the text implies she's just terrified. There were rumors flying around that Yang Guifei wanted to kill her. She knows that if she goes to the emperor now, and then Yang Guifei eventually comes back.
She's a dead woman.
Exactly. She's way too politically savvy to be the rebound. So the emperor is left all alone, rejected by the backup plan, missing the main favorite, and this emotional frustration turns him into an absolute tyrant.
The atmosphere in the palace just turns dark and fast. The source says he becomes anxious and irritable.
He starts finding fault with everything. The tea is too hot, the floor is dirty. He starts whipping and beating the palace maids and the eunuchs.
It's a reign of terror in the domestic quarters. And you see, the emperor isn't ruling the country. He's taking his heartbreak out on the staff.
Which creates this pressure cooker that Gao Lishi, the head eunuch, knows he has to release.
Gao Lishi is the ultimate operator, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He knows the emperor wants her back, but is way too proud to ask. And if he suggests it himself, the emperor might refuse just to save face.
So he needs the suggestion to come from the outside, from the bureaucracy.
Enter the cruel officials. This is a fascinating detour in the text. We're introduced to two men, Jiwen and Luo Xishuang.
In history, they were known as Luo's pincers and Ji's net. That sounds like a horror movie duo.
It's not far off. They were the emperor's enforcers, the men who used torture and entrapment to purge his political enemies. They weren't the scholars who lectured on morality.
They were the guys you called when you wanted someone destroyed.
Exactly. And it's so telling that the Yang family goes to them for help. Yang Guacheng bribes Jiwen heavily.
But why would the emperor listen to a torturer about his love life?
Because Jiwen is brilliant. He knows how to frame the argument to appeal to the emperor's ego, not his heart. He doesn't say, oh, she's innocent, or you love her.
So what's the pitch?
Jiwen goes to the emperor and says, essentially, Your Majesty, Yang Guifei is a woman without knowledge. She offended you, she deserves punishment, but she has been honored by your favor. If she's humiliated outside among the commoners, it reflects poorly on your dignity.
That is brilliant and so twisted. He's arguing she should be brought back not to be forgiven, but to be punished properly inside the palace, just to protect the emperor's image.
He even says, even if she deserves death, she should die inside the palace. It gives the emperor the perfect out. He can pretend he's bringing her back for, administrative reasons, not because he's lonely and miserable.
And Guanzong agrees immediately. The text says he sadly nods. It's very specific. And he sends a meal and gifts to the Yang house. This is the olive branch.
And now we get to the climax of this whole drama. The imperial messenger arrives at the Yang mansion with the emperor's takeout, basically.
This is Yang Guifei's moment. She knows this is her one chance to turn this entire situation around.
A lesser player might have just eaten the food and said thank you.
But she understands the theater of power. She weeps. She refuses to eat. She tells the messenger she deserves 10,000 deaths. And then she delivers this incredible monologue.
She says, my clothes, my jewels, my jade, these are all gifts from the emperor. I can't claim them, but my skin and my hair, these were given to me by my parents.
We have to unpack the cultural weight of that statement. In the Confucian worldview, your body is a sacred gift from your ancestors. You do not damage it.
To cut one's hair was a grave act. It was a punishment for criminals, or a sign of severing your connection to the world, like entering a monastery.
So it's not just a haircut.
It is a corporal sacrifice. She takes a pair of scissors or a knife and shears off a lock of her hair. She hands it to the messenger and says, present this to the emperor. This is my final goodbye. I am as good as dead.
It's a symbolic suicide. She's sending him a piece of her body. It's the ultimate guilt trip saying, I've destroyed the most sacred thing I have because of my regret.
The messenger rushes back to the palace. You can just imagine the scene. It's late. The emperor is pacing. The mood is tense. The messenger presents the hair.
And Xuanzong just melts.
Completely. The sight of the hair breaks him. All the anger, the mouth moisture, jealousy, all that pride, it just vanishes. He's overcome with regret.
And he doesn't even wait for mourning?
No, he orders Gao Lishi to take the carriage and bring her back immediately, in the middle of the night.
When she arrives, she keeps up the performance. The text says she has destroyed makeup. She's not trying to look beautiful. She's looking devastated. She weeps and apologizes.
And the emperor helps her up with his own hands. The reconciliation is instant. They feast, they sleep together. The crisis is over.
But the consequences are permanent. The next morning, the Yang family and An Lushan come to the palace to congratulate them. The gang is back together.
But it's not the same. The balance of power has shifted. The source says the emperor's favor for her increased tenfold after this. The Yang family realized they had survived the absolute worst storm.
They became untouchable.
And this is the tragedy the Sui Tang Yanyi wants us to see. The narrator explicitly warns us right here. The text says that if Tuanzong had just held his ground, if he had just left her at her cousin's house,
the group of small men would have withered away. The corruption would have been cut off at the head. And Lushan might have lost his central connection to power.
Precisely. The narrator calls it a predestined karmic debt. By bringing her back, Xuanzang didn't just save his relationship. He cemented the doom of his dynasty. That rekindled love would, as the famous poem says, topple the city and the country.
It is terrifying to think that the An Lushan rebellion, which killed millions and permanently crippled the Tang dynasty, might have been preventable if the emperor had just stayed angry about a flute for a few more days.
It illustrates the fundamental flaw of autocracy, doesn't it? The emperor's emotional need for this one woman outweighed the structural integrity of the entire state. He couldn't handle being lonely, so he mortgaged the empire's future to buy back his own happiness.
And the cruel officials who brokered the deal, they weren't thinking about the empire. They were thinking about their own survival, using the emperor's psychology against him.
It was a masterclass in manipulation. Everyone played their part perfectly. The weeping consort, the terrified cousin, the cunning torturer, and the emperor walked right into the trap they set.